and 23. Our narrative lectionary now takes us from Moses and the baby Moses. Now, much has happened. They've crossed the Red Sea, they have been freed, and now we have the giving of the law, the Ten Commandments, at Mount Sinai, or Horeb, as it's often called. This is the version that comes to us from Deuteronomy 5. Moses convened all of Israel and said to them, "Hear, O Israel, Shema Israel, the statutes and ordinances that I am addressing to you today. You shall learn them and observe them diligently. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. Not with our ancestors did the Lord make this covenant, but with us, who are all of us here alive today. The Lord spoke to you face to face at the mountain out of the fire. And he said, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods in front of me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of their parents to the third and fourth generation, but showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses God's name. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male or female slave, or your ox or your donkey or any of your livestock, or the resident alien in your towns, so that your male and female slaves may rest as well. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep a Shabbat, a Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother as the Lord commanded you, so that your days may be long and that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God has given you. Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't bear false witness against your neighbor. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Don't covet your neighbor's house, or field, or male or female slave, or ox or donkey. Don't covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. God's story, our story. The wonderful Lutheran theologian David Lose likes to describe the relationship between law and gospel by going back into the biblical story, the story of the Ten Commandments, and he'll say in kind of a biblical shorthand that 19 comes before 20. So when you're reading the story of the Ten Commandments in Exodus, pretty much the same, a little bit different, but pretty much the same. The point is, and it's in here too, where God says, I took you out of Egypt, I freed you from slavery. The point is that the relationship that God established with the chosen people comes first, that the relationship is primary, and the law, the Ten Commandments, the 10 words, with all of their ethical demands on our behavior, that comes afterward. It's more of a gift that pours out of the relationship that already exists with God. What Christians will refer to as the prologue to the Ten Commandments, the Jewish people consider it to be the first word. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. It's establishing and setting that relationship as the first point of everything that follows. So as we're hearing these words, and Luther is fond of saying, one of the things about Luther was that he was a scholar of languages, and that was one of the things that kind of shifted everything for him as he went back into the Greek and went back into the Hebrew and heard things in a completely different way. As he's talking about the Ten Commandments, it's really funny because Luther points out something that when you're reading it or looking at it in Hebrew, it becomes really clear. Luther says, God shifts to baby talk with the Ten Commandments. And as you're looking at it, God really does. And it's not that God is talking like a baby, but it's like God is saying to us, listen, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. You know, let's make this as unnuanced and uncomplicated as you possibly can so that you can just really hear it. And each one of those, whereas, you know, in our texts it says, thou shalt not, which, you know, kind of gives you wiggle room right there because nobody speaks like thou shalt not. But in the Hebrew, it's lo, walo. Just don't do it. No. And I love that because basically God is kind of laying out this gift for us. And once again, it's not a bunch of rules and regulations for us to be in favor with God or rules and regulations for us to make it to heaven. But instead, God is giving us this gift as an expression. If you've been part of the Wednesday evening class, this whole idea of mishpat, this idea that God has created the world in a harmonious and connected way, that there are things that we can do that would be beneficial to mishpat, beneficial to these relationships that God wishes and wills for all people. And that's what the Ten Commandments, they are actually called within the text we have. The Ten Commandments are called mishpatim. They are an expression, an outgrowth of God's deep desire for how the world was meant to be and how the world can be. And it's all about how we live with one another. Notice how the Ten Commandments talk about our relationship with God and that it can be positive and not derogatory, or that we would not just kind of use God or God's name as some kind of a fickle thing that we can just drop whenever we want to, or that God is our little buddy that we can pull out whenever we need some kind of magic or miracle, but instead that we have a strong, respectful relationship with God, a loving relationship with God, and then the rest of the things that follow. I want you to have a good life, says God. So don't kill. Just don't. Don't do it. Don't steal. Don't say false things about another person to try to gain advantage over them. Honor your family, honor your elders, respect them so that there can be a relationship of respect within the family. Take a day off. I love that part. Remember the Sabbath, take a day off and don't just have a day off for you, but let that day off spill. Let the rest spill down all the way down into your animals and your dogs and your cows and your sheep. Let it be for the whole of the world. And continuing on, don't steal, don't covet. And that covet is it's a really specific but big word in Hebrew that means to be consumed. It means to be consumed with wanting something, where it kind of takes over your whole life. And basically God is saying, all of these things, killing, stealing, lying about somebody else, coveting what somebody else has, those are the things that mess up this world. So let me talk baby talk with you for a while. Just don't. Come to the edge of that? Don't. Tempted by that? Don't. Find yourself heading down that path? Don't. Because God says this is more than just about making it to heaven or a ticket into the happiest place on earth. This is how you can live well now. How you can live well and you can be a force for good, to spread that good, God's good, into the whole of the world. 10 words. Really important words that are an outgrowth, are a spilling over of the fact that God already loves us and cares for us and wishes the best for us. Amen. Amen.